Good evening, friends. Enjoy your meal if you're eating. September has arrived at the yard, and that means it's time to find out which muscles are forbidden to stretch in September. I'm joking, of course, not in September. Stretching is forbidden in the fall. And not just in fall, but winter, spring, and summer too. There are certain muscles that always want to stretch, but after you do this, your condition worsens significantly. This is a false feeling because some of our muscles are in a constant state of tension, constantly experiencing such static stress, and we want to constantly stretch them to get relief. But we don't get it. We get even more suffering. The first of them are the muscles of the back of our neck, the long flexors of the neck. And to them we will add the trapezius muscle, the upper trapezius as well, which constantly requires stretching from you, wants to be stretched all the time. The first muscle. The second muscle is the back surface of the thigh. Here it is. Many people also get the feeling that it is shortened, stretched, and they want to stretch it out. Here we have the berry muscle, but there is no feeling that it needs to be stretched, but there is also the pear-shaped muscle, which is also constantly shortened. We will also touch it with you. And there are muscles that really require constant stretching, but no one ever wants to stretch them, although they should be the first ones you stretch. The first is the pectoralis minor muscle. Here it is represented on our model. The second is the iliopsoas muscle, or lumbar iliac. It is also known by this name in some scientific manuals. Here are the short neck flexors. You will never be able to isolate and stretch them, but if you could, it would be good. And the third are the ladder muscles. Here it is. So, friends, here. In this photograph, a young, average man is depicted. So, friends, the attentive viewer has already noticed that our guest here is sitting on a comfortable chair. But the thing is, as you remember from the past, we didn't sit on chairs much with you. We sat with you in our caves, some on skins, some just on the ground, sitting in the evening after hunting mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. And the women gathered various fruits, roots, walked through the forest, dug the earth. We all gathered this together, mixed all this, got different soups, cooked borscht on the bone. Then we gathered together, sat, watched the fire. A new series of fire every evening. So friends, but in our life now there are chairs. It has become more comfortable to sit. And therefore some muscles are constantly under the pressure of your own body. They are squeezed as if between a chair and you. This is primarily our large gluteal muscle, the muscles of the back surface of the thigh. And this part is always under pressure for us too. This is the spine flexor. And here too, this part, if we lean on the back of the chair with you, rhomboid trapezium. That is, these muscles constantly experience such tension. This disrupts blood supply to them, causes certain stagnant phenomena, certain inflammatory phenomena. There is a disruption of blood and lymph flow. And an experienced viewer of the channel knows that there is such an anatomical formation. It is called fascia. It's a sheath that covers not only the muscle itself, giving it shape, but there is also a superficial fascia, which is located under the skin cell layer. And all of this should slide relative to each other. The superficial fascia should move relative to the deep fascia. And there are also adjacent fasciae between neighboring muscles. Each muscle, here, for example, one muscle, the second muscle, and between them there is also here. One muscle has a fascia, another muscle has a fascia, and they should move freely relative to each other, slide, because there should be a serous fluid here. But sometimes it becomes, for example, too thick. Sometimes it happens that adhesions form here. Connective tissue is formed, fibrous tissue. That is, this is the tissue that begins to replace certain structures of our body. Where something is missing, connective tissue appears. Therefore, when it comes to the gluteus maximus, the back surface of the thigh, if you start to stretch them, but at the same time there will be between the muscles, and there are several muscles, the biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus muscle, and there you will have spikes. All this will start to stretch unevenly. For example, the biceps femoris will stretch, but the semitendinosus muscle will not. And such a muscle imbalance will arise. Therefore, before stretching them, it is necessary to eliminate these fascial disorders. So, friends, the most dangerous thing that can come to your mind is stretching the muscles of the back of the neck, the long neck flexors, and the trapezius muscle. When you spend a long time studying your phone, just like that, so you focused, for example, on some news, new in quantum mechanics, let's say, you decided to check what's new, or let's say new achievements in higher mathematics. Here's some formula, possibly you've forgotten. Also Google it. And at this moment, long neck flexors get tired over time. And what do you want to do? You want, of course, to stretch them. You stretch them like this. This is how it usually happens, but it can also be different. I want a trapeze. You get relief for a while. Because this stretched muscle, it seems to relax even more. But over time, a phenomenon occurs where you start to lengthen this muscle, and you can't make it longer. And over time, it becomes weaker and weaker, to the point where instability can develop. Also, the shoulder begins to shift even more forward due to constant stretching of these side muscles, of this part of the trapezius. If you know, there are such tribes in Africa. And women have decorations, such rings. They put them on their necks like this, and from constant wearing, without taking them off, they don't take them off, and from the fact that they constantly wear them. Giraffes have long necks, but it's an illusion caused by their sagging shoulders and collarbones. Their neck muscles are strong, but the neck length remains the same. And if, for example, the wife behaved improperly, let's say, or, in short, the husband was upset for some reason, from the morning until she woke up, he subtly approaches her, removes these rings from her neck, and she wakes up in the morning, for example, the alarm clock rings. She gets up, hop. Under the weight of the head, her neck breaks. That is, these rings, the constant wearing of these rings, they cause weakness in the neck muscles, so strong that she can't later hold the weight of the head. From the constant stretching of the neck muscles, of course, there won't be such a thing, but you start striving for this. So, friends, next we have this. What to stretch? What to stretch after all? Which muscles do we need to stretch? The most important thing is our stair muscles. If you want to stretch your sewing, if it's tired, that's what you need to stretch. Then it's the small pectoral muscle and the subscapularis muscle. That is, if you've been sitting for a long time, these three muscles, stand up, stretch. Now I'll show you how to do it. Let's start with the stair muscles. You can do it sitting, you can do it standing. How to find it? You put your hand on your shoulder like this and turn your head so that your nose is looking at your elbow. Here is the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and right behind it is the scalene muscle. And you put your hand behind the back edge of the sternocleidomastoid muscle and find such a dense formation. This is exactly what the anterior scalene muscle will be. You press on it right away with 3 fingers, just like this. You press. And at this moment, you start moving your head, maintaining the position in which your nose is looking at the elbow. And here is where you will be able to isolate and stretch not only the scalene muscle, but also the fascia of this muscle. On one side, you can do this, and on the other side as well. If you just stretch to the side like this, you won't hit this muscle specifically. You will be stretching the trapezius more and a bit of the muscle that lifts the scapula. I'll talk about them now too. What's special about them? Here you need to grip the latissimus muscle like this and move it. And in this way, you restore the mobility of the fascia. You do it on one side and then the other. And after this procedure, you will notice that your head, as if it has lifted, no longer strives to hang down. As for the trapezius and the muscle that lifts the scapula, there is such a peculiarity here. The thing is that the muscle that lifts the scapula, it goes from the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae to the corner of the scapula, here. And the trapezius, its upper edge, covers like this, overlaps the lower part of the muscle that lifts the scapula. And here is such an area where the trapezius is directly above the muscle that lifts the scapula right here. And very often in this place, such spikes are formed just like this, because one and the other muscle are constantly straining, and one muscle stops sliding relative to the other. Muscle, the one that lifts the scapula relative to the trapezius. And here, you need to, before you stretch all this, you need to remove these spikes. How is this done? Look, that is, you find the angle of the scapula. It is located here approximately. This is all closed, here with muscles. The trapezius is on top, and there, where you have a muscle that lifts the scapula, it attaches to the angle of the scapula. You press a little on the trapezius, and your task is to relocate. Here. Here you have the upper muscle, here is the lower muscle, and you need to slightly relocate this upper muscle relative to the lower muscle. The first thing you do is move it forward-backward like this, then slightly to the right-left. Try doing this, that is, to the center from the center, to the center from the center, from one side, from the other side. It may not work out in all directions at once. That is, it's not just you're massaging like this superficially. Here's your task to press on the trapezius and try to move the entire muscle like this a little bit. Slightly forward, slightly back. And in this way, you will be able to stretch these spikes. Here. This is the first option, how to do this. The second, you can do it straight. Here is the angle here at our trapezius muscle. Here, between the trapezius and the muscle that lifts the blade, put your finger like this. And in this position too, work on this gap. Like this, in this way, separate one muscle from another. And the next option is you press on this spot between these muscles and start moving your head. A movement resembling a ladder muscle. We moved, just pressed here already. And now you make a movement. Tilt your head slightly to one side and back, to one side and back. Also here you feel a slight stretch. We are stretching with you, tearing the spikes between the trapezius and the muscle that lifts the scapula. Here, and the next one, we have a large and small chest muscle. Here too, but we all know how to stretch the chest muscles in the doorway, for example. But it also happens here that you pull. Do not stretch. What to do? Here too, you should be able to remove this sleeping process between the large and small chest muscles. Here we have a large chest muscle on top, and here below is a small chest muscle under it. Very often, a sleeping process is formed between them as well. What to do? You take slightly pressed on the large chest muscle and also start to shift it. The small chest muscle, it is attached from the coracoid process of the scapula here to the ribs. Third, fourth, fifth rib. So you pressed on the projection of this muscle and also shift it slightly outward, outward, inward. And so you work through each point, you shift. That is, the point here is not just to work through these muscles, like a ball, for example, to press. But here you pressed on the muscle, and the upper muscle relative to the lower one, you start to shift slightly outward, slightly inward, outward, inward, along the entire length. You start from here, you finish here. Slightly above, slightly below. You work through this entire area in this way. You can also add an up-down movement at several angles. The better you work through, the freer all this will move. Well, friends, we've figured out this part of our body. Now we need to find out what to do here, down below. And it's interesting here too. Look here, what a situation can be. Here, because we've been sitting with you for a long time, our head is looking down. We need to breathe somehow. And the position of the chest cell has changed, so the abdomen begins to protrude in this way to give the diaphragm somewhere to expand during inhalation, so the intra-abdominal pressure begins to increase. But I see many of you are already tired. Many of you already want to eat. Therefore, we will save this information for our next meeting. And today your task is to try all this that we learned with you today. Write your achievement in the field of science, in the field of self-improvement, what you have achieved, how it turned out. What is the mood in general? Otherwise, in principle, we do sports, help parents. Until the new broadcasts.